Welcome y'all, Wes with DIY Food Plot Pro. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's episode we're talking about changing the habitat on our property. It's one of the main things that I encourage landowners to do when I'm out consulting on their property is to either fire up the chainsaw or call the logging crews. It needs to be done much more than what it is across the whitetail's landscape, across highly managed whitetail habitats. A chainsaw is something that is one of the most beneficial things that we can fire up. There are some things that we need to watch out for though before we fire those chainsaws up. There's a lot of thought that goes into where we log on our property, where we cut bedding areas. Do we cut the entire property or do we cut pockets? It varies widely across different farms that I've been consulting on, and today that's what we're going to talk about, is how do we kind of differentiate all of the different variable factors that are out there, and how do we make the best decision possible to be able to hold the most amount of mature bucks in daylight on our properties. And that's what this all boils down to, is we want a mature whitetail to call our property home during the day. So during the nighttime, he is going to leave, he is going to move around other food sources, but legally they're not going to be able to kill him at night. So if we can keep him here, we can get him bedded on this property during the daylight hours, we will have the best chance of killing that buck. And we do that through habitat improvement and changes to that whitetail's environment. So as we start kind of talking about logging and making bedding cuts for whitetails, one of the first things that a lot of folks do is say, do I need to cut my timber? If it's a limiting factor in your area and you don't have a lot of high quality cover, the simple answer is yes, you do. But then it gets very much more complicated. So one thing that I always tell and encourage landowners to watch out for before harvesting timber is to try to attempt to get invasives under control before opening up that canopy. This can be a major headache for you. It's still something that I believe is more beneficial in the long run, even if you are battling invasives, but it's something that really needs to be taken into consideration before that chainsaw gets used and before we decide what areas to cut. So say we have areas where we have a lot of tree of heavens, probably not the greatest area to go in there and make a bedding cut if we can help it. Some areas we can't help. Autumn olives the same way. If we have a few starting to kind of jump in there, we're much better off to take a year or two to get those trees treated and get them killed before we open that canopy up. Once we open that canopy up, it is going to be very difficult to control them, as they're going to get a ton of sunlight on them and they're going to explode. So always take care of your invasives before you're going out there and you're cutting any timber or any bedding areas. Oftentimes these areas will still be good even with these invasives in there, but we don't want an entire woods full of tree of heaven and not oak trees. And let's get into cutting timber and what we're looking for and things like that. So if you have a large tract of timber, let's say you've got 100 acres of timber, should you clear cut or cut it very hard the entire 100 acres? And I think that is a huge mistake. I think you're much better off taking strategically placed areas and cutting pockets, 2 to 5 acres per bedding area, and moving these all around on the property, on the outskirts of the property where you can hunt it. So what does that look like for, say, the remaining 50, 60 acres that we didn't cut into a bedding area? That would just be a straight timber harvest for me. You still want those areas where you're not cutting them down into a bedding area. And I'm going to get to why I recommend that here in a few minutes, but we definitely still want areas where deer are less likely to be. That helps with our access getting to and from our stand locations in those areas where we're not cutting it super hard and making a bedding thicket. So if we go in and we cut that whole 100 acre block of timber, but let's say we cut it really hard on the 100 acres, what have we accomplished? Now, 100% we have made a phenomenal area for whitetails to be, and that is no question going to get mature bucks to an older age class. No question about it, because we have a large tract of a refuge. We have a huge sanctuary that you're not going to be able to hunt. You are looking at solely hunting the perimeter, and generally that's all we're doing anyway. But there's no rhyme or reason to where whitetails bed in that point. They will bed where they want to, and oftentimes that is not going to be in areas where you're going to be able to hunt them. So what this leads to is us seeing sign 300 yards in and then say, all right, we're going in after them. And then we bump 47 does on the way in there, screw the whole hunt up on the very first hunt. Been there, done that. What I much prefer to do is to put strategic bedding areas across the property. And then if we want the timber money and the timber's ready to harvest in the other areas, then we can do a select harvest on them down to maybe 16, 18 inches. Where we're just looking for timber money, we still want to have those oak trees growing and producing those acorns. We're going to open the canopy up some, but in 3 to 5 years, those areas will look virtually the same as they did before. The bedding areas will look wildly different. The bedding areas, we're going in there and we are basically doing a clear cut. So before I go into a bedding area and do a bedding cut, I'm looking at the trees that are in there. I'm looking for low quality, low value trees that are not beneficial to wildlife, more specifically to deer. So some of the varieties of trees that I'm looking for to cut down in that bedding area to make that bedding thicket are going to be hickory, maple, sweet gum, a sycamore, hackberry. I'm going to leave a few standing white oaks and standing red oaks inside that bedding area. I don't want to leave an entire huge area of white oak and red oak inside a bedding thicket. For the same reason it's very difficult to hunt acorns, it's going to be very difficult to get in there to hunt those deer, and they're not going to want to come out because you have bedding and food in the same area. So I'll leave a tree or two of those in there, but virtually I'm going in there and I'm going to clear cut. Now, a whole nother video for a whole nother day is what I'm going to do with those tree species. Some I will flush cut, others I will hinge cut. Some I will flush cut and treat with herbicide. Others I will just flush cut and let them try to re-sprout. That is something that gets a whole lot deeper than what I want to get into on this video. Just a little quick tip. I love hinge cutting elms. Whitetails love to eat them, and they are very, very beneficial to them. And we have a lot of them in our woods. They don't typically grow all that big, but they are very good trees to hinge cut. They hinge cut easy. They live well, and whitetails will eat the absolute fire out of them. So by making specific bedding areas through the property, virtually by doing this, we enact a travel corridor for these whitetails. Now we can make a travel corridor simply by thickening that area up a little bit to where whitetails would rather travel from bedding area to bedding area during the rut. They'd rather travel in that little bit thicker area rather than trying to be out in the wide open. Now, this doesn't have to be significantly thicker. We're not looking to make one big bedding cut. It doesn't have to be significantly thick. It just needs to be thicker than the woods that are around it. So oftentimes we can just go in there and we can drop 2 or 3 trees that are along that lane, and that is going to provide the cover those whitetails need and desire to travel from bedding area to bedding area to bedding area. And that's what they do during the rut. Those are phenomenal places to hunt pre-rut, during the rut, even post-rut, is to get in those areas. You can get in easy because whitetails are not bedded there. And as those bucks cruise the downwind side of those bedding areas during the rut, they're coming right by your stand location at bow range. Those are great areas, and I always like to put those on the design. So many folks want to go out we're going to cut all the timber down really hard. And that definitely helps with habitat. That definitely helps hold more mature bucks in daylight on your property, but it makes it much, much more difficult to hunt. So what we're looking for when we're designing a piece of property is we are looking for something that holds mature whitetails, but also allows us to hunt that property effectively. Food plots go into this massively. This can be extremely difficult to set this up in a way where you've got food plot, bedding area, travel corridor. A lot of folks don't have access like this to be able to hunt these locations. And it makes you really get creative with these bedding areas, with these food plots, screening and access, how we get to these locations to be able to hunt them. If you need help setting up your deer hunting farms, you can go to my website, www.diyfoodplotpro.com. Click on Boots on the Ground Consultation, Boots on the Ground Visit, and I will come to your farm this winter and we'll develop a plan for it to make that farm hunt as best as it possibly can, with designing access, screening, food plots, standing blind locations, mock scrape, water holes. The whole 9 yards will be in that plan. It'll be a full blueprint of what you need to turn that farm into the best hunting property in the neighborhood. So if that's something that interests you, you can go to my website, www.diyfoodplotpro.com. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Y'all smash that like and subscribe button.